This is our third video in the series on making interactive worksheets. We've looked at a simple drag and drop exercise, and then we've also had a look at a sorting exercise. Now let's have a look at how we could do maths in this way. So just because we like to change the look and feel of things a little bit, we're going to change the background. Let's use this background. And now we're going to start inserting our maths equations. So we'll just take a text box and a very simple maths equation. We'll have 5 plus 4. Going to be our first maths equation that we want to use. So again, you can change the font to whatever you want to change it to, and let's make it a little bit bigger. So we're going to have a look at a couple of different examples. 5 plus 4. So we'll see how we can do addition. And then we're going to have subtraction, 10 minus 4. And let's have multiplication as well. 5 times 3. Just as an example of how we could use these types of presentations to do these kinds of things, to make it a little bit more interesting and visually appealing. So what we're going to do is we're first building our background, building the element that we're going to add the interactive elements to eventually. Right, so just want to space that so it kind of lines up. Now, what we're going to need first is we're going to need little calculation boxes. It'll make a lot more sense once we get to the final product. So this is going to be our calculation box. And again, let's make it white with a nice thick background. Right, so there's the first calculation box. There's our second one. And there is our third one. Right, so we'll make sure they're nicely evenly spaced out and that it fills up the page nicely. So I've got my three equations that I want to complete, and then I've got my 3 calculation boxes. So all that I still need now is I'm going to need answer boxes as well. So we'll move them over here. The answer boxes can be nice and small actually. Well, not small, but let's turn them into squares where they'll answer. And I'll just add a couple more in there. Right, because I want them to see these are going to be the answers. You don't have to do it like this necessarily, but I'm just going to make sure they've got a green edge and they're a little bit thicker so that it's clear that those are going to be my answer boxes. So this is going to be my background. The rest of the things that are going to go on top of this are all going to be interactive elements. What you can do as well if you want to, and especially if this is going to be the first time that you do something like this, let's just add some text to explain what these different boxes are going to be. This is going to be my calculation box. And we're going to have another one for, we'll put it over here. This is going to be my answers. Make it look a little bit nicer. Increase the font size a bit. And we'll change the font to something a little bit more fun. Right, so calculations, answers. Once I'm happy, I'm going to flatten it. You're not sure what I mean by flatten, make sure that you review the first video especially, where we talk about what we're doing exactly, but simply put, nothing on here is now editable and changeable anymore. So once we have this, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the numbers are represented by, in this instance, we'll just use little circles for that. Right, so there's a circle. I'm just going to draw my first circle. You need to make it can't be too big, but it also can't be too small. And I'll explain why in a minute. So there's my first circle that I'm going to make. And we make it a nice thick border. I've got one circle. Now, because I've got 5, I need to have 5 of these, right? So typically it's better if you're going to space them out so that they're nice and close to crop together. There we go. I've got 5 little circles. Okay, so there I've got 5 circles. I'm going to take 4 of them. I'm going to copy them. I'm going to put them over here. Right, so again, let's just make sure it lines up nicely. And we can move these around, these over here. Now, the next step that's very important not to forget is we need to group these because this is a group of 4. So right click and say group. Select, right click and say group. Control Alt G is the shortcut for group. Right, so that now I've got my 5 and I've got my 4. So I've got another 4 over here. So I can just simply copy and paste that. There's my 4. Here I've got 10. So now what I can do is I can copy and paste a 5 and another 5. But it doesn't kind of fit together that nicely now. So what you could do if you want to, you can just flip that around. There we go. And now it moves in. And now we just need to make sure that it lines up nicely. Right. So there I've got 10 and I've got 4. But this time, because this is 2 groups of 5, again, I need to regroup these. Control Shift G is my shortcut. Sorry, no, Control Shift G. Control Alt G is my shortcut for group. Control Alt G. So now I've got 5, I've got 4, I've got 10, I've got 4. We've got another 5 here at the bottom. Let's copy and paste this 5 and we'll move it over here. Now with this 3, it's not entirely necessary, but I mean we can add these if we wanted to. So if I want to go get my little circles, I've only got 4 5s, so getting a 3 is not part of that. So the easiest way to do that is just to go and ungroup one of them. So now I've ungrouped it, go select 1, 2, and 3. I've got 3 little dots. I'll paste them and I'll move them here to the bottom. Right, just make sure that you regroup that again. Otherwise, what's going to happen is they'll select individual dots. You can obviously leave it as individual dots if you wanted to. So now to show you what the ideas of the calculation, how we can use this to help our learners just to visualize some of these basic calculations. Here they go, they click and drag the 5 over there, they click and drag the 4 over there, and it's a simple case of counting so that they can get to the answer. The one thing we haven't done yet, and that's an important step to still take, is we need to draw our little text boxes in the answer box. So in the answer box, I'm just going to draw a text box. I can change the size so I make it nice and big. If I want to, I can change it to a font. It makes it look a little bit more interesting. So ultimately what's going to happen is the learner is going to click there and they're just going to go type in the number 9. And again, I'll position it so that it's nice and center or whatever the case might be, however you want to position it. Just make sure that when you draw the text box, an important little trick that I can tell you is when you are drawing a text box, you'll see there's this little icon here that says resize shape to fit text. It's usually best to say do not auto fit, because if I say do not auto fit, it gives me the option to drag this text box to the size of the whole block. From there, if you want to make sure that it looks nice, when you see this alignment option, align allows me to go center and center. So now they can click on the block and it'll actually write it in the center. So let's just go and copy and paste these little blocks. And then obviously we don't want them to have the answers. So let's take those answers out. Right, so there I've got it. Now, let's have a look at what we do with the subtraction one, because if I'm going to move that over there and I'm going to put that over there, then suddenly my answer is 14, which is not what I'm looking for. So in order to do this, we're going to change the color of the two sets. So I'm going to select this group and I'm going to make sure it's got a different color. So now I can move the 10 in here. I can go put the 4 on top of it. Okay, in this instance, you need to make sure that the one that you're going to subtract is obviously at the front. So bring to front. So I'll move the red on top of it. Try and make sure that that's why it's important to make sure that the positioning of your items is the same, because now all that they do is they count the remaining purple ones and they can get to the answer, which is 6. Right. Now with a multiplication, and that's why this third one isn't really that necessary, but a different way that you could approach this. And I want to show you what you can do. But again, this is not necessarily, this is an option how you can do it. So let's move these 3 dots. What we're going to do is we're actually going to make sure that they are not connected in the same way. So what we'll do, we'll select the 3 dots and give them a different color as well. Let's make them orange. So when they do multiplication, The intention is they're going to move one dot there, they're going to move one dot there, and they'll move another dot there. So when that happens, they've got their group of 5. They're going to move their first group of 5 in here. They're going to copy it and they're going to paste it. They're going to move another group of 5 under that dot, copy it and paste it, and another group of 5 under that dot. So now they can see I've gone 5 times 3. There's my 1, 2, 3. There are my 3 groups of 5. And I can simply go and count those. And now I know I've got 15. That's an example of how we can create these interactive worksheets using slides. One thing that is very important to keep in mind when you are trying to do this on a mobile device that has a very small screen. So on a tablet, it's still fine, and obviously on a desktop or a laptop, it's going to work very well. But on a very small screen, because these items are quite small, what happens is when they select them, they get the resize buttons, and it becomes very difficult for them to do. So it doesn't work. This is not one that I would recommend you do on a mobile device, except if you're going to make it very large and do one equation per slide, which is, of course, something you can do. The one last thing about this before we finish up, we have another video where we talk about how you can enhance your presentations on Google Chrome with a couple of extensions, where I'll take these examples and I'll show you how we can create an interactive presentation that we can show the learners on our whiteboards in the front of the classroom, because that's when this also becomes very powerful.